Begad here. Today I'm bringing you another good one that I've been waiting to add to my collection for a long time. So this one is a Colt. This is the Colt Trooper Mark III. And this is a double action revolver, and this one happens to be chambered in .357 Magnum. Colt produced these from 1969 all the way to 1983. And then after that, I believe they produced the Mark V, if I can remember correctly. This revolver has a 4-inch barrel. It's a 6-shot double action revolver. It has adjustable rear sight on it. And I'm gonna call this similar in size to my Smith & Wesson 686. It feels very similar. The grips might look a little fat, but these are just wooden panels that can be unscrewed and taken off. And I've seen these with original, thin grips on them, or thinner grips you can get from them. But these are original grips, and they have the beautiful Colt emblem in these. So these are quite nice. And so let's see what this firearm says on it. It says Colt's PT FA Manufacturing Company, Hartford, Connecticut, USA. And on this side it says Colt, it says Trooper Mark III .357 Magnum cartridge with a couple, those Colt stars by it. So it's pretty cool, and I'm happy to have this in my collection. So when Colt first started manufactured these at a lower price point compared to the Anaconda and the King Cobra, and they market them towards law enforcement and civilians. That's why you get the name Trooper. The other thing these came chambered in is 22 rimfire Winchester Magnum. And if you can find one of those are worth a lot of money, and there's actually more of a collectible market for those than these chambered in .357 Magnum. They also had the officer's model that was chambered in .38 Special. But this is kind of in the middle of collectability, but still a very collectible revolver. We've got some Fiocchi 142 grain jacket on hollow points in here, .357 Magnum, full power loads, and we will go ahead and we will shoot our targets and see how we do. There we go. It's a good shooter. There's that other thing. That's why 6. Yeah, just the design of this Mark III, where you can see the, the hump comes up. I can feel that just bite into the web of my hand just a little bit. It's not bad though, but I can feel it in there. So how did I come upon this revolver? I was driving one day for work, and I just happened to be going past one of my favorite gun stores, Benson, Coram, New York. And I stopped in there. My friend Nick was working, that I've known a little over 10 years now, that I bought a bunch of firearms from. And he was like, Ed, you've got to look at this. This is right in your wheelhouse. So I was like, absolutely. So I looked, and then here we go. Here was the Colt Trooper Mark III. As soon as I picked this up, I noticed there was no wear on the bullion at all. There's literally almost no ring in the cylinder. I'm like, this thing has barely been fired. Somebody bought this probably brand new in the 70s. It sat in a safe, and now it's in Benson's gun shop, and they're asking $700 for this. So since I didn't know a ton about the Trooper, I know more about the Anacondas and the Pythons and the King Cobras. I was like, I'm interested, but I've got to do a little homework on it. So Nick's like, sure, but he's like, not that many people have really picked this up. We're in the COVID crisis, and this was back when Trump, presidency was coming to an end. And so we were in a crazy climate. So people weren't really looking at these kind of classic revolvers. So I went home, did my research, and it was interesting. People like these, but they really talk about them as they're a lot lesser than a Python, a lot lesser than a King Cobra or Anaconda. And as soon as I handled this and looked at it and looked at the machining of this revolver, I'm like, it doesn't really look like a lesser revolver to me. I'll take their words and, the descriptions in the articles I've read about these, you know, there's probably, you know, the trigger's not quite as nice, the machining's not quite as nice, it's not as good looking of a gun as a Python, but it's still a Colt, and it's still a discontinued gun that you can't get anymore. It's still viable, and it's still pretty cool. And this one's in excellent condition. Also, I did not have a Colt in my collection yet, and I was dying to add one. So for $700, I figured this thing was worth about $1,000 the day I bought it, and it did not come with the original box. So I went back about a week later and I picked it up, and I could not let this go. And I am very happy with it. And as you can see from my footage, it's a good shooter. So I've got some just regular Remington 158 grain 38 specials in here now, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna shoot these double action. Just want to get a good close-up here of reloading the Colt, just to so you folks can just see how nicely this cylinder is recessed for the rounds. That was one thing when I looked at this revolver that I really enjoyed, and it's quite nice machining here, but it just feels really good, and it's just that little extra attention to detail that not many revolvers have today, but you know, definitely pretty cool, and another good cool factor for this revolver. So let's go about my impressions of this revolver. What do I think about it? The first thing, you know, I always look at a metal firearm or a plastic firearm or a polymer firearm or aluminum firearm, and I'm going to just inspect it and see, you know, look for milling marks and see how clean the thing is and how well it's put together. This thing is clean. This is a pretty well-made firearm from what I can tell. It's just, actually, it's beautiful. The lines are all clean. There's no milling marks on it. All the panels fit together right. Everything's, the edges are rounded off. There's no burrs. Even the way the trigger's made, it's kind of, I'll give you a close-up of it, but it's kind of scalloped out a little bit on the top, fat on the bottom, and it's got a nice round face to it that's really, it's smooth, and the whole thing's beveled and deburred. The hammer's got some excellent knurling on the top of it, and same thing as you just go over it, even the sides of it, they're very smooth, and this firearm's really been, you know, it's hand-fitted, and it's, you know, back in the days when they used to hand fit firearms. Nothing wrong with new firearms, but this is a nice gun, and anybody that tells you, or that reviews that you read on these, that this is kind of like this cheap Python. This is not a cheap gun. There's nothing cheap and substandard about this firearm at all. You know, I would compare this, you know, this is just as good as my Smith & Wesson 686. The trigger might not be quite as good, but I'm splitting hairs at this point. I can definitely live with this. But unfortunately for me, this is a collector's item, so I'm not going to be holstering this in a leather holster, nor am I going to be carrying this out in the woods, unfortunately. But this does make me want to buy another 4-inch 357 Magnum revolver, because the one thing about this barrel length right here, this will fit in a hip holster very nicely, and you can do this on an inside the waistband holster or on, you know, an outside the waistband holster, unlike a 6-inch revolver. My 686 with that extra 2 inches of barrel makes it difficult to carry on your waist. You know, I really have to carry that up in a shoulder holster. You can carry this in a shoulder holster, but a 4-inch revolver is definitely, you know, it's going to be good in a lot of different uses because of the barrel length and for carrying this. But this is an excellent example. Even the grips on here, you know, still have the original lacquer or whatever kind of a varnish, whatever kind of a finish is on these. And they're just beautiful, and there's no damage to this at all. So yeah, so I've got some more of the 357 Magnums loaded up for Yoshi. We're not going to go ahead and test a bunch of different kinds of ammunition on this. Obviously, it's a Colt revolver. It's going to work with anything we put into it. It's going to go bang. Click. I like it. I can even see a little of that flame coming out the side of it. So folks, I wanted to give you a good close-up here of the Colt, and just so you can see how nice this is. And this is after I've shot it, so it's not as clean as it could be. But you can just see, you know, there's no burrs. It's just, there's no machine marks. It's just a really nice revolver. And to go over the functions of this quickly, it's pretty straightforward. There's your double action right there, and you can see the cylinder turns clockwise. There's your single action right there. Also, to make a note, it has a transfer bar, and the gun will only go off if the trigger is pulled back all the way. And to go ahead and to release the cylinder, unlike a Smith or a Ruger where you push forward or down into it, you're going to pull that back. So it's a little different. And there's another close-up of the cylinder, and you can see how those are recessed. I showed that earlier in the video. And that's just real nice. Also, make note on the earlier models it wasn't, but your ejector pin is, you know, shrouded by the lug underneath the barrel, which is a nice addition. But overall, just a really nice revolver. And no, this is not a cheap version of a Python or a Colt. Is it less expensive, a little less pricey to produce? Yes, but this is not a cheap handgun. All right, so I've got my last 6 rounds of 357 that I brought with me. Right now we're about 35 yards from these steel plates. I'm going to go ahead and we'll do a little single action on these puppies and see if I can get some good connections on these things. Just got the 6-inch on the last one. Not my greatest, but not bad. You know, I'll take it. All right, so now I'll go double action, and we're right in front of them. We're probably 15 yards away from them, and see how I do. Not bad. So I'm gonna do a little longer range shooting here. I'm gonna say I'm about probably 25 yards. This isn't my record. You've seen me shoot my Smith & Wesson Model 10, at least probably 60 or 65 yards for that review. But we're gonna go ahead at 25 yards because I am running low of 38 special. We can also try this with 357 Magnum and see how we do, but we'll give it a whirl now. We'll go ahead with single action here and see if I can hit these targets. All right, I got 2 more 38 specials with me. There's another guy shooting down here, which is good. Notice an increase of people shooting down here in the pit with the whole COVID and the election and some of the other interesting things that are going on in the world we live in. So I'm just gonna, my last 2 rounds, we're gonna go right for that red plate, the 6-inch plate. So you see, it'll definitely do its job if I do mine. So I've got some of the Fiyoshi 357 loaded up right now, and this is an odd one. It's a 148 grain full metal jacket, but they seem pretty hot. Never chronoed them, but they're hot enough. And we'll go ahead, we'll do the same thing, single action on both plates and see how we do. Yeah, I've got to say, I always love a 357 Magnum revolver. There's nothing better than these things. You know, when you can put in 38 specials and you have something tame to shoot and you put in some 357 Magnums, and it's a whole different gun. But it's definitely something quite unique to these. It's really, you got to experience it. You also have to own one or more than one, just like I do. I'm set up pretty close to our 2-liters here. I've only got 3 of them today. I wanted to give you a good, you know, try to really hit them in the center and really send them flying with some 357s. Good fun. Not as quite as accurate as I hoped it'd be, but I don't have as much experience firing this revolver as I do some of my other firearms from this summer. Ammo's definitely getting scarce, and I refuse to buy or overpay for crazy ammunition prices listed on Gunbroker. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was Colonel Jeff Cooper that said a 4-inch revolver is the most useful gun that you can have. And if you're only going to own one gun, one handgun, this is a good choice. This is an excellent choice. The only thing you're going to be hurt by a little bit is going to be capacity. You have 6 rounds, but you can get a 686 or those Rugers that hold 7 rounds. It's still not a large frame revolver. That's still a medium frame revolver. The reason for that is you can shoot 38 specials out of this, and it's a puppy dog. It's a nice gun to shoot, very, very pleasant to shoot. And you can teach, you know, your spouse, you can teach children, you can teach people unfamiliar newbies to shoot this. And then you can put, and 38 special or 38 special plus P is perfectly fine for home defense, you know, in that nature. Then you can load this up with 357 Magnum and have a gun that's going to be a good woods defense gun that can protect you against bears. And you can watch my previous reviews on 180 grain 357 Magnum buffalo bore. That's going to stop a bear. I don't know if it's going to stop a grizzly bear, but it'll stop any North American bear just fine. But your versatility with this revolver, from shooting, you know, a light 125 grain 38 special all the way to 180 grain 357 Magnum, and everything in between is going to be huge. You can even load birdshot into this out of 38 special cases and take care of rattlesnakes and little pests around your house or in your garden. But if you're going to have one gun, this gun definitely fits that bill. It's going to be a 4-inch 357 Magnum, just because of the versatility and all the different kinds of ammo you can shoot and load for it. And hand loading for this is going to be a lot of fun also. So I've got my scorecard here of what I scored this revolver. Let's go over this quickly. So for the trigger, I gave it a 7.5. The single action's great, which you would expect it to be. Double action's good, but it's not as good as my Smith. But it's a good trigger. I'm happy with it. Concealability is a 6. You know, it's got a cylinder. It's a little bulkier. It's got some weight on it, but this is definitely a concealable firearm. Self-protection, I either give it a 7 or an 8. And it's also good self-protection against 2- and 4-legged predators. Investment, I'm going to give it an 8. It's a Colt. It's not a Python. It's not a King Cobra, but it's still a Colt, and this is discontinued. And now that CZ is buying Colt, I'm going to say it probably adds a couple more dollars, because this is the last of, you know, original Colt-made firearms. Cool factor, it's a 7. Same thing. It's not an Anaconda. It's not a King Cobra. It's not a Python. So I give it a 7, so it's still cool. Versatility is a 9. Versatility, you know, besides a shotgun, is going to get a 10. Probably a 12-gauge shotgun will be a perfect 10. From all the ammo we talked about, you can shoot, you know, earlier in the video. This is going to get a 9 for versatility. You can do more with this than you can do with any semi-automatic gun, just because of the different chambers, different rounds you can get for it. Go to war capability. I'm going to give it a 7 or 8. You know, limited a little bit because of based on capacity. Value bang for the buck, I'm going to give it a 6, only because this is a Colt, so this is expensive. You still get a good bang for the buck with this, but not as much as, you know, you could pick up, you know, a Ruger or a Taurus. It's going to be less expensive than this. Shootability, 9. Easy. You can load this up with 38 specials, and you can shoot this thing all day long. If you can find 38 specials, you can afford to shoot it all day long. Firepower capacity, I'll give it a 6. Just because your capacity is limited, but as far as firepower, 357 Magnum full power loads, they can't be rivaled. They're, you know, sort of a handgun this size, that kind of velocity and that kind of a heavyweight bullet coming out of it, you can't be stopped. So the total score for this revolver, it's interesting, and basically I took a 7 from one column and an 8 from another. I gave it a 69 out of 100, which is pretty good. That's definitely one of my higher scores for a revolver or for any handgun. And the interesting thing is this revolver was made in these revolvers were introduced in 1969. So folks, I wanted to thank you for watching my review on the Colt Trooper Mark III. I appreciate you watching. If you like this video, feel free to give me a thumbs up. And also subscribe and hit that notifications button. It helps my channel. It helps me, you know, fund guns and fund ammunition to do these kind of reviews. Also my new camera equipment. Also, if you have questions, feel free to post them and I'll try to get back to them as quickly as possible. And try to get a nice shot with the moon rising in the back, which is pretty cool. It's a beautiful night out here. It's starting, the sun's definitely going down rapidly and the temperature's also dropping too. Thanks for watching, folks.